Alright, students, we are starting today's class now. Last week's class, which was the first class, was the preface to this course, discussing why the philosophy of art is established as a discipline. All disciplines stem from questions. There is no discipline without questions. If we consider the realm of aesthetics and artistic creation as a domain constituted by sensory judgment, there is no discipline to speak of. If we must talk about discipline, it would be something like the study of cooking. Yangzhou cuisine is different from Ningbo cuisine. You cannot say that the truth lies in Yangzhou cuisine or in Ningbo cuisine. Each has developed its own culinary art based on its traditions. Hey, what you make is Ningbo cuisine, and what I make is Yangzhou cuisine. So, in this purely practical domain of practice, a tradition can be formed, but a general discipline of so-called taste is impossible. There is no universal discipline of taste in the realm of human cuisine, right? However, in the realm of art, in the realm of aesthetics, can we say that these judgments are all sensory judgments? And we specifically point out that the term sensory judgment should be in quotes because it does not require objectivity. When it comes to aesthetics, there is no dispute, and when it comes to taste, there is certainly no dispute. This is an undisputed fact. So, Kant raised a question, which we discussed in the last class. Art is one of the highest spiritual activities of humanity, and of course, art has always been one of the highest spiritual activities within the realm of sensibility. We cannot imagine what the human world would be like without art, and art is based on the creation and reception of art. In short, where does the basis of artistic practice lie? It does not lie in biology, nor in the existence of a biological species. So, let's talk about our ancestors. When they became human, that is, they started making tools, when our ancestors were making simple pottery, they also decorated the outside of the pottery with certain patterns and colors. This practice did not increase the practical value of the pottery, right? It was just a vessel. Therefore, this behavior was not just about making pottery, it also gave it an aesthetic appearance. This kind of practical activity does not originate from human biological nature. The behavior itself is not directly governed by physical needs. It goes beyond physical needs. So, we come to the discussion of aesthetics and artistic activities. They cannot be reduced to human biological nature. So, here's the thing, why do humans seek beauty? According to Kant, the first reasonable word about beauty is Hegel's evaluation, which means that aesthetic judgment is not based on our senses experiencing pleasure and then making a judgment. This flower is fragrant, not because of the pleasure it brings, but because of the judgment. The objectivity of this judgment is not based on the universality of concepts. In the field of botany, there is a botanical or biological concept of reproductive organs, which is universal, right? Then, we associate individual flowers with this universal concept, and we can make this association. Is this judgment objective? Yes, but the objectivity of aesthetic judgment is not based on concepts, so there is a very particular objectivity of judgment. This objectivity is not based on universal concepts, but it is still objective. Aesthetic judgment without concepts but with objectivity. This is very interesting, and I believe the previous class led everyone to think about this issue. We have said that if a painting is observed by a group of people, some may think it's amazing, beautiful, and of extremely high aesthetic value. However, others may not find it beautiful at all. What do? We cannot convince someone that the painting they are looking at is beautiful through reasoning. You can explain many reasons to them, such as the artistic techniques used in the painting, the composition, the color coordination, and its value. You can go on, and they may agree with your points. However, they may still not find it beautiful. It is evident that the judgment of a work as beautiful is not based on a series of concepts. If it were based on a series of concepts, we could convince people that the work is beautiful through reasoning. Therefore, the objectivity of aesthetic judgment is not based on concepts, not on rational concepts, but it is still an objective judgment. Therefore, we need to ask about the basis of the objectivity of this judgment. If we reject objectivity, in fact, this discipline of aesthetics, and later, what we should call the philosophy of art, cannot be established. If everything is relative, subjective, individual, and not open to debate, then there is no discipline here. But a clear fact tells us that beauty is only experienced in society. What does this mean? If a person is stranded on a desert island, a single person, a lonely person on the island, where there is only him, he does not have the need to dress himself up, nor does he have the necessity to use beauty to decorate the surrounding environment. We think that we dress in nice clothes for ourselves. No, it is for the appreciation of others. In the approving eyes of others, in the eyes of appreciation, we find satisfaction in ourselves. So, aesthetic is a social emotion that inherently demands universality. Otherwise, no matter how you dress, no one cares, right? You also know that no one cares. You are not dressing for others to see, you are just keeping warm. When humans dress for warmth, the first practical purpose is to block wind and rain, right? Of course, there's also a sense of modesty. And then there's the whole issue of nudity, group nudity, that's a different story altogether. So, when we're dealing with the basic issue of clothing, at first, we wouldn't have any aesthetic thoughts, right? At least I've got something to cover myself, but you wouldn't stop there, only according to biological requirements. You always hope that the clothes you wear will be seen by others. Beauty is a social emotion, not an individual biological sensation, so we can't reduce the need for beauty and the ability to feel beauty to our biological capabilities. Our taste buds can savor different flavors, a natural biological ability, sweet, sour, bitter, and spicy, no need for teaching, right? We have the ability of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. In our previous class, we started to discuss a very important issue, distinguishing aesthetic perception from other human pleasures, all of which are based on biology. Confucius said in the Analects, the master said, "I have not seen one who loves virtue as he loves beauty." A wonderful piece of music had deeply moved him, and he sighed, saying, "For 3 months, I did not feel the taste of meat." In agricultural civilization, people love to eat meat. In fact, I'm craving some braised pork now. Braised pork has its own unique recipes all over the country. What a great pleasure. Confucius said, "For 3 months, I did not feel the taste of meat, and did not seek other forms of pleasure." He could not imagine music brought so much pleasure. It's about the pleasure that music gives us, it's not biological, we can only say it through analogy. Cows can also understand music, for example, when milking cows, right? It's said that playing music increases milk production. Are they appreciating Beethoven's Symphony of Fate? We don't know. How can we know if cows understand symphonies? It's just impossible to say. Music exists for humans as humans can distinguish it, and this sensation for humans is a feeling shared by all humans. What does it mean when we say someone has a high aesthetic taste? In fact, it means that they have an ability that allows them to effectively convey their emotions to others. Through their words and actions, through their clothing and appearance, right? You have the ability to convey your emotions to others through these means, and this ability is called what? Aesthetic taste. It's about conveying to others. When I write a poem, it's not just for my own enjoyment. When a poem is being written, the author must have an invisible reader in mind. If they were only writing for themselves, there would be no need to write. They want to put their emotions into something in order to evoke similar emotions in others. The original purpose of artistic creation refers to the social nature of aesthetic perception and pleasure. It inherently demands universality and objectivity, so the issue I've spent a lot of time discussing is actually about breaking through the prevalent notion, especially in today's era, of the relativity of aesthetics. We observe individual differences in aesthetics. Can we derive a subjective sense of beauty from these individual differences? We cannot. So, if someone says, "This flower is beautiful to me," it's absurd. You don't need to say that. When you say this flower is beautiful, what does it imply? It requires the agreement of all humanity. If you say stinky tofu is delicious, you're not asking everyone to agree. If someone disagrees that stinky tofu is delicious, you won't argue with them. If someone disagrees that this flower is beautiful, you won't discuss it with them. If someone disagrees that a piece of music is beautiful, you also won't discuss it with them. This is called art criticism. This succinctly summarizes the central issue we discussed last time. When we say beauty, aesthetic judgment has objectivity, it is connected to truth, right? Otherwise, it has nothing to do with truth. But this truth is not the logical truth we are accustomed to learning now. It's not scientific truth. There is a kind of non-logical, non-scientific truth, or we can say, a truth before logic, before reason. Is there such a realm of truth? In the opening statement of our last class, maybe not the first sentence, I quoted Nietzsche's statement, "What people discover in things through science is actually pre-inserted." Inserting is called art and religion, and extracting it is called science. Scientific truth is derived, not original. This point may surprise many. One important characteristic of European art during the Renaissance period is the extensive use of scientific methods, such as the application of perspective in painting, right? Chinese painting never adopted this approach. So, when Westerners saw Chinese paintings, they were quite surprised. They found that the traditional paintings did not correspond to their perception of three-dimensional space, right? The relationship between near and far objects did not strictly adhere to the principles of perspective, did it? So, they were very surprised. Initially, they thought this kind of painting was rather primitive, but now they realize it is quite remarkable. They used scientific methods, including detailed studies of human body proportions in sculpture, which were very realistic. At that time, when you look at artists like Michelangelo, they were not just artists but also scientists. They even required knowledge of anatomy. All of this was crucial for successfully sculpting a lifelike human body and establishing the proportions that evoke beauty, right? This is what we call the golden rule, the golden ratio. All of these seem to be, of course, the application of scientific methods. However, you cannot say that art is based on science. When I faced the French cave paintings, our feelings were deeply moved. These were the primitive paintings discovered in France. The galloping bison leaping against a background of red ochre powder. How many years separate us from this painting? It's an ancient past. Yet, you find the emotional and spiritual essence of the primitive humans right in front of you. It's alive. There's nothing scientific or unscientific about it. I have mentioned before that science came much later, right? But humans have been dealing with things, like smelting bronze in the Bronze Age. The smelting of metals in the Bronze Age was not based on science, not on chemistry or anything like that. It was done through imagination and intuition. I just mentioned that quote from Nietzsche about art. What people discover from these things is not actually what they find, it's what people have preconceived, what they have put in there called art and religion, and then they bring it out again as science. This notion of art is not a clearly defined domain of art that is distinct from other areas, as commonly understood today. It's not like that. The art of early humans was basically witchcraft, you know. It's all connected, right? The work of our ancestors. Before they went hunting or farming, they always had some kind of witchcraft ritual. And let me tell you, this witchcraft stuff was all about using images. They'd dance or look at those cave paintings. Those cave paintings weren't like the art we see today, meant to be shown off in a gallery. No way. They were actually used for carrying out primitive witchcraft. So, art actually came from witchcraft, and let me set the record straight, witchcraft wasn't the opposite of science, like some people think. The ancient folks weren't dumb enough to believe that by doing some witchcraft, they could control nature and make wild animals bow down to them. Nah, that's not how it worked. The ancient people didn't see witchcraft like we do now, as some kind of fake science. They didn't use these mysterious methods to control the weather or make nature obey them. Nope. So, what was their witchcraft all about? It was the emotional release of the original community or tribe before they went out to battle with nature. It was the source of their primitive emotions. And let me tell you, these witchcraft activities were just as important as they went about their work, because their work couldn't have happened without witchcraft as the foundation. So, our discussion? Let's just put it on hold for now. Let's just put it on hold, and we don't need to dwell too much on the status of art. I said that this is one of the highest three spiritual activities: philosophy, religion, and art. Because I talked about the highest faculty of the human mind, the spirit, which is higher than reason, and the basis of creativity is not in logical inference. The study of science requires excellent rational ability, a grasp of concepts, correct unfolding of judgments, the formal correctness of reasoning, leading to the reliability of conclusions. But these do not create anything. The source of creation is not reason, but great philosophical imagination and intuition. Art is the domain of philosophical imagination and intuition, so what do we need? In such a highly technologized era, we need to set aside time in our lives for the life of art. Whether you create or just appreciate, you can thereby preserve and nourish your spirit. You thus maintain your creative ability, but it would be merely an acquired ability, the ability to copy. Because when we appreciate true art, we will have the effect of catharsis. Of course, Aristotle's main discussion about art was about the effect of tragedy. Because the effect of tragedy surprises us greatly, that gives us tremendous fear and horror. It should have brought us pain. It is performed on the stage, and people go to watch this tragic work again and again, each time with a handkerchief. Why buy a ticket? You know. To cry. Crying, the heart feels comfortable. It is said that the film Dream of the Red Chamber was filmed right before the Cultural Revolution broke out, and then it was not publicly released. It was not publicly released. After the fall of the Gang of Four, Dream of the Red Chamber began to be publicly released. The Shanghai Ximin Evening News reported that an old lady went to see it 10 times, each time with a handkerchief. Dream of the Red Chamber is a love tragedy, at least as the main theme in the film. There are also the tragic works Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet. Shakespeare has 4 major tragedies. Have you heard of the ancient Greek tragedy, Oedipus the King? So Aristotle was thinking, why can people feel pleasure in the face of the display of their own painful fate? Where does this pleasure come from? He proposed a concept called catharsis. There are 2 explanations for this. One is that it is called fighting poison with poison. Suppose you encounter the kind of suffering in real life as in Oedipus the King, right? Killing your father and marrying your mother, right? If you were the real-life Hamlet, you would be crushed by his real pain, wouldn't you? But now Hamlet is performing on stage. When you watch it, you deeply understand this tragedy, but what emotions are released? The highest pleasure among all aesthetic activities, called the beauty of tragedy. Tragedy is actually beautiful, it makes Aristotle want to study it. This is called the catharsis effect. In our previous reference to Marx's Economic and Philosophic Manuscripts of 1844, we discussed the distinction between human labor and animal production. Animals create things that satisfy their bodily needs, constructing according to the scale and needs of their species. Humans, on the other hand, understand how to produce according to the scale of any species and know how to apply the inner scale to objects, thus constructing according to the rules of beauty. This passage is from Marx's 1844 manuscripts, also known as the Paris manuscripts, discussing the issue of beauty. What inspiration does this passage give us? First, the construction of beauty is a sensory activity, taking place in the sensory realm. This is the first point. Beauty is not a theoretical activity. If it were a product of theoretical activity, then I, Wang Defeng, could now be called an artist. My philosophical papers are all theoretical works, right? They are not beautiful, you know. This is because theory does not belong to the sensory realm, which is the first point. Secondly, what does it mean when we engage in labor due to the natural necessity of biological species to survive in the natural world? It is not the simple act of animals gathering food. We labored. What does labor mean? Although our motivation comes from our biological existence, we have a stomach that needs to eat, right? Humans are also cold-averse animals, unlike other animals. So in the face of this natural necessity, we labored. So what does labor contain within it in regards to humans' relationship with the natural world? Sensory freedom. In sensuality, we are not completely dominated by our biological nature. In sensuality, there is a sense of freedom. What is the prominent evidence of this sensual freedom? Constructing according to the laws of beauty, this is called the internal measure of the human. This sensual freedom, the realm of beauty, the realm of artistic creation, is the realm of sensual freedom. Beauty originates from the sensual freedom of the human soul.